Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action in the British Basketball League this week, including the last 3 minutes of a mad game. I feel you remember. Do you remember the old?
Feeling a bit emotionally fragile at the
Oh,
minute.
yeah. Do you remember the old
Yeah.
basketball call, the old 0898 number that you used to
Yes,
phone
yes.
up to get match reports? And we'd
Welcome
park.
to the 08.
Yeah. We'd park the best thing for the end. I think we're doing that here today, aren't we? Because purely chronological, people, not for clicks, honestly. Dave, before we get underway, you had a bit of a 1 a.m. officiating rant, and I feel like it's probably easier if we pick up some of that before we go into the individual games, rather than trying to pick it up,
I
because
think
there
you're
are
probably right. I mean,
some threads through it all.
Yeah, my mood doesn't really improve just watching the Sheffield London game today with London basically given every opportunity to win by the refs, including Sharma kicking the ball over half court and a half court violation being called, and then Decker doing a double slap on the floor with 30 seconds to go, and the ref deciding not to tee him in direct comparison with what happened to Cohen at Cheshire when he was on his second technical. And then various other calls as well. But no,
the one thing I would say, though, Dave, is generally we spend a lot of time talking about bad calls, and we don't spend as much time talking about bad shots and turnovers and all of that. And generally speaking, of the three teams on court, the one that makes the fewest mistakes is usually the referees.
Yeah, and to be fair, my figure is 85%. 85% calls are right, and probably another 5% that I think are wrong. I've got a different angle to the refs. But there's little giveaways, which, in relation to reffing calls, which aren't the bang calls, they're not the 50-50 calls, they're not even the 75-25 calls. They're the procedure calls. I mean, down at London today, for instance, we had two FIBA referees giving 2 foul shots for a team control until the table told them to change. Now you cannot tell me that that is a standard call, which happens 15, 20 times a game. You cannot tell me that they are concentrating on the game, that their heads are in the game if they are doing that. Right, you can't. I mean, it's a mental thing. Now, here's the thing, right?
The other thing I would say on all of this is that there's a number of calls that we've seen over this weekend and indeed before, where it would be sorted within 15 seconds on a video replay, and I've no idea why we haven't got to that. I was talking to refs last season about it. In the summer, I was led to believe it was going to be close, and yet here we are still near the end of March, and we still haven't got it. And I think we're really not helping, because there's a few of them where it would just be, and we've had it on TV the last couple of weeks, where we've instantly seen something. The Mackenzie 3-pointer that was given as a 2. There was another one in the Manchester game. I forgot what it was now, where we had a replay that showed it was a goaltend. It was a goaltend where it hit the backboard and it was blocked, and they gave the basket. They didn't give the basket. They gave 2 free throws. Those sorts of things are easy fixed, and I don't know why we haven't got to that.
But I can live with that type of thing, because the game is fast, and the calls are bang calls, right? And nobody's ever going to get all of them right. Even a foot is an inch behind the line. It's unfortunate on the players, but no ref is signaling a 3 if he thinks it's a 2. No ref is signaling a 2 if he thinks it's a 3. What I'm talking about is, as the league professionalizes, as the budgets go up, as the money flows in, we are having a greater and greater disparity between professionalization of the clubs and the level of support and understanding given to the officials. It is frankly nonsense that somebody is expected to work a 5-day week, travel for 3.5 hours on the A1 on a Friday night, and go and referee a basketball game before traveling 3.5 hours back in front of 3,000 people for a pittance and expenses. Right? That is where we're at. And that is nonsense. That is not going to at any point accentuate good habits, and it is not going to accentuate good things happening. You've got Sam Decker earned £1 million last year. He's playing the Virtue Motor Arena, and literally you've got refs traveling 3 on the day of the game, 3 hours to get there, 3 hours to go home, and they'll be getting, 100 quid plus expenses or whatever it is, something nonsensical, right? The game which set me off was obviously Friday night's game, because it was one of those unfortunate perfect storm games whereby the vast majority of the calls went in the favour of one team. The vast majority of incorrect calls went in the favour of one team. And I watched the whole game back to try and find calls that went in the favour of Newcastle. And I watched the whole game back to see if there were any calls I thought were actually wrong, which were right. And there were a couple. But, at the time I thought were wrong, but actually were right. And when you get that, and unfortunately it starts, I'm afraid this is what you were saying, what I'm saying about, the two refs in London who give a team control, 2 shots for a team control foul. You've got a ref in Newcastle who gives the ball out of bounds when it's a foot inside the line and staring at it. Now, no, he doesn't make that mistake deliberately. That's Josh Bow. He's not standing there. And as soon as he blows his whistle, he probably wants the arena swollen up, because he knows. Unfortunately, then you have the second part of the problem, which is that there's a bit of a siege mentality in my mind creeping into the referee, and that might be something to do with us. So it might be our fault. I don't know. But that siege mentality, which is if you could criticize one of us, you criticize all of us. So immediately, Josh Bow makes that, what was, I'm afraid, a horrendous call. It was just wrong. He was standing there a foot away and he was looking at it. And I'll get to why I think he got that wrong in due course. The other ref on the other side, Tom Woodman, decides here's something on the Eagles bench and immediately tees the bench up.
And just to move it away from the Eagles for a second, Lloyd's technical at Sheffield was very similar to that. Yeah. Ali Hodgich's second technical wasn't too dissimilar.
I'm about to get to that one.
whether it's a bounce of the ball or whether he said something or something. And he's actually, the only difference with that is Ali Hodgich has got the call his way.
Yeah. No, the point that I'm trying to find threads, and the best way of starting the threads is to start on the calls. Now, I'm not going to stick in the Newcastle game at all, but this is the biggest point. So Tom Williman immediately supports his mate. That means that Josh Bow's got nowhere to go, right? Now, we often see referees coming back and saying, I don't think you got that one right to each other. No, nothing happened there. The first thing was, you said something, we'll tee you up. So that's a free point for London. Eagles missed the opportunity of an open 3-point shot in the corner for Cohen. And in a close game, that matters. But more than anything, why is it that an experienced ref who was standing a foot away sees something that simply didn't happen, right? And this is the other thing that I get that I think, firstly, they travel up traveling up from Manchester or the Northwest on the M62A1 on a Friday night. It's a nightmare. Secondly, it's a matter of physical and mental preparation. What we've been doing all week to get ready for that game, because the players have been training all week to get ready for that game, right? Now, the refs haven't. The refs have been doing what they do, which is their jobs. They've been doing other things, okay? And thirdly, what do you think about the game? Well, where it's 9th versus 1st, Lions hammer everybody. Maybe it's a mental kind of not being ready mentally for the intensity of the game. You don't just make mistakes in isolation. No, players don't, coaches don't, refs don't. It's all about the preparation. It's all about preparation that they're able to afford and the way that they see it. And the reason I then go on, because it's all about how they communicate with each other and how they support each other and the siege mentality of it. In the third quarter of this game, Javion Hamlet made a 3-point shot, and Aaron Best basically mowed over his offhand, and they both ended up on the floor. And there was an argument that you could say that Hamlet kind of hung his hand out there, and therefore it's an offensive foul. And there was an argument, maybe that probably a stronger argument, that's Hamlet's perfectly reasonable shooting motion and Best mowed him over, and this should be a 1-point shot, 1-point foul shot. What happened was Steve Ferris called a flop. There was just a flop warning, sorry. Now, there's no way in the world that could be a flop warning, but he's called it because that's what he saw, right? 3 minutes later, the beginning of the fourth quarter, and we'll get to this in the game, and I know you will, and I'm not going to talk about the call now. But Javion Hamlet shoots a 3 in the corner, and is called for a kick out, an offensive foul. Now, you don't think that's because at the quarter break, Steve Ferris and Tom Budderman have gone over and said, Hamlet's looking for that call. Because they're talking to each other and they're trying to work out what's going on, and they're backing each other up.
And there was one in today's game where Fletcher was asking that question, wasn't he? I think it was foul on Fletcher personally, but he was at least asking that question.
And so the point I'm making is that this becomes a problem. Now, the best refs that I remember when I was around were, to use a phrase, and I apologize to Kate Unsworth for this phrase and any of the other lady refs, ones with balls. insofar as they didn't mind if they made a call which one of their mates didn't agree with, if they thought it was right. Neil Wilkinson went to a European game, okay, and called a goaltend on the last second for the away team.
Yeah.
Right? He did the same actually in Newcastle Arena 2001 when Fab was playing for the Sharks against the and Finch and Garboletta were coaching, and TJ went the length of the court in 5 seconds and laid in on the buzzer. Todd Cawthon went through the rim, ball didn't go in. Neil Wilkinson runs to the bench, gives 2 points, game over. Everybody walks out, all hell breaks loose, but he didn't bottle it. Right? And it's not, he wasn't looking at his mates and saying, what do you think? What do you think? He had the call and he called it. Now I'm using Neil because Neil was one of our very best refs, even though he got a big bit of stick because he was very little and bossy, and people didn't like the fact that he was bossy.
Yeah.
But I loved it. Because effectively he took control of situations. Right? And at this point in time, I saw that crew on Friday night. I don't know who's in charge of that crew. I don't know what the dynamics of it were. I don't know what the communications were, and it wasn't right. Now then you move on to Saturday, okay, and you've got Ali Hodzic, who is gets an unfortunate technical in relation to knocking the ball away. It's unfortunate because that's the rule. And it's unfortunate because, in my view, that technical should be a delay of game, but that should go on either the bench or it should just be a delay of game. It shouldn't go on the player. I don't think it needs to go on the individual player. It's too
because it wasn't, he didn't get the warning. It was somebody else who got the warning.
It's too substantial a punishment on an individual player when the second one results in you being thrown out. So, you know, from my perspective, that's a delay of game. It's 1 shot foul, 1 shot delay of game. Give them the ball, go back the other end. Forget about any form of extra kind of punishment.
Presumably, it has to sit in the book somewhere, though.
Well,
so bench technical, wouldn't it?
Bench technical. What's the 1 shot foul on the inbound? Well, it's 1 shot, it's on a player. So you can give it on the bench technical. If it happens 4, I suppose, then you have the risk that a coach might foul out if it happens 3 times. But I would prefer that to what it is. Or you could just have a separate, delay of game technical. It doesn't have to go on anybody. So then, Ali Hodzic plays with a little bit of an edge, but quite a kind of a refined edge. He plays a little bit like, somebody that if you walked up to, and I don't go to many nightclubs, but if you walked up to a nightclub and he was the doorman, you wouldn't be messing with him. He has that kind of professionalism about him, and the body control about him, and deportment about him, whereby he can look a little bit menacing on the court. And in part of that, and also he makes, and that's the way he plays. He's very solid, does all the things he's meant to do. He's clearly concentrating on what he's doing. Professional, very professional guy.
He's also local, so he's got half his family in the crowd.
So then he gets given a technical, but basically I couldn't see on the telly, but what appears to me to have been throwing the ball back to the referee with a little bit too much force or a little bit too much attitude, right? Which, as I say, having just seen, Sam Decker slap the floor twice while complaining to a referee in front of London, in front of the cameras at London, and having seen Ryan Martin slam the ball into the floor yesterday, so it goes almost to the almost hits the roof at Surrey Sports Park, and neither ref batted an eyelid, or the same refs didn't bat an eyelid. To throw somebody out of a game on that's the equivalent of the one I was complaining about. It's actually worse than the Cohen one, right? And sorry, the Cohen one at Cheshire when he banged
Cheshire,
okay. So it's worse. It's just it shows an utter lack of interest in what the game is about, which is the players. Now, you then, as I say, move on to today, and as I say, and there's 2 things that struck me today. One, I know, and the league will know, that Newcastle are not happy with the way the game on Friday night was reffed. Right, and I know there is matters have been raised with the refereeing coordinator, etc., and or the league or whatever about that game. And who do they walk up to find us there on Sunday? The same guy who refereed them on Friday. Now, there's no reason in this world whereby that referee should be placed in the position where he has to referee the same team again when there's whether effectively there are outstanding complaints in relation to what went on. That is crazy, particularly when you look at some of the people who weren't refereeing this week. And I can talk about Gavin Williams wasn't refereeing this week. who's experienced referee. Wales. Chris Dodds wasn't refereeing this week. Ian McDonald from Scotland weren't refereeing this week, and yet you've got Steve Ferris, who's been in a difficult situation on Friday night, who has left Newcastle aggrieved, rightly or wrongly, doesn't matter, with what's going on, and the turnaround is that we're going to see him again on Sunday. How fair is that? Not on Newcastle. How fair is that on the ref?
Yeah.
How does it's where and then I get, unfortunately, to the whole appointment thing, which is at this point in time, given the level of professionalism and money increasing in the game with the teams, we don't have a situation whereby we can realistically have 30 to 35 BBL caliber referees. You don't have 30 to 35 Premier League referees. Now I appreciate that there's only need one instead of three, but we don't have as many games here. And I know what Steve Ellis wasn't, but Steve Ellis was refereeing an NBL 1 game this weekend. Wasn't refereeing the BBL game. He's BBL. Why do we have referees who are doing BBL games, then NBL games on a Saturday, when in fact what they should be doing is getting the support and actually going over the BBL games and working out what went wrong and how do they do things better? The whole thing is at this point appears to be a mishmash of amateurism and lack of accountability, and I don't put that on the refs, because the refs are by effectively amateur. They're doing something that without it we wouldn't have a sport, and more importantly, their remuneration and what they're getting out of it. And what you go from. One ref tells me, and I do get messages from some of them like me, some of them probably stay quiet. But one ref tells me, you drive 4 hours to a game, you drive 4 hours back, you get a bottle of water, and that's it. The whole, and which is fine if we're all playing, at Leeds University in front of 50 people, or at Newton Aycliffe Leisure Centre in front of 100. But you're travelling to, if you're coming up to Newcastle to play at Virtue Motors Arena in front of 3,000, with two guys who played in the NBA recently playing, then are we really to be surprised when it turns out that unfortunately the game is too fast for some people, for some of the refs? And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's different speeds at different level, and if you're not accustomed to it and you're not prepared for it, and you don't give yourself the best opportunity to prepare for it, and the people who pick refs don't give them the best opportunity to prepare for it, they are being set up to fail. Right? And this isn't a cop out. And I did tweet all that stuff at 1 o'clock. And because I was genuinely frustrated with some of the stuff that I saw. It's not a conspiracy. I've never believed in conspiracy in relation to the league. I do think there's a little bit of deference going on. I'm afraid how whichever Unsworth it was doesn't give Sam Decker a technical with 30 seconds to go in that game today. I don't know. That was his visual immediate descent right in front of him. Put a whistle to his mouth and didn't. Me and you have a slightly different view about the Luke Nelson play at the end of the fourth quarter in that game. We'll get to that. But again, I thought that's my view is that's deference. That's not, you've got to have, to use a phrase, balls. And sometimes you got to be if you're going to be the very best of refs, you got to be unpopular with other people as well, with your crew, with everything, just to get it right. And to be fair, as I say, the best ref I ever was around was Neil Wilkinson. He's the only one who ever threw me out of a game. Right. Yeah. And I got and there are others. I give you other names and whatever, but you've got to be willing, to have that understanding, and they're being set up to fail. That said,
sorry,
Dan, you tell me what you think. Sorry.
Well, so the things that I was, because obviously I've looked at what you put out, and we watch all the games as well.
Yes.
It's a curse.
Probably the only people ever have. This is the first time it's basically ever gone out on YouTube, and we're the only people who care enough to do it.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's other people, Dave. I'm sure there's other people as masochistic as we are to watch. It's when you spend your Saturday night
psychologically damaged as we are.
It's when you spend your Saturday night watching Bristol against Plymouth.
Well, you're going to have to talk me through that one, Dan, because
so my thing with it this year is number one, that the technical that we've just talked about, the Ali Hodgic technical, the Lloyd technical, the bench technical on Newcastle, I think we've got to a point now where it's too quick, and there needs to be. Now, I don't want to give a carte blanche to people to go mad and complain, and even the Decker thing. I agree with you, given how everything else has gone. But to me, it's that sort of just.
But what does Ali Hodgic think about seeing Martin slam the ball on the ground and saying, do that?
Yeah,
that's the problem. If one guy does it, then you can't turn around and the next day have a totally different set of rules being applied.
So there's that. There's the unsportsmanlike in transition. I think I know what it is, but what I've seen is it is given and not given is not what I think it is. So either I've got it wrong, and maybe that is the case, or it's just inconsistent. And
I think they're set up to fail on that.
Yeah.
I do. Because the clarity is not there, and there needs to be he's already having all this clarity about moving screens, illegal screens, and all of that. Yeah. But they are calls which ultimately rarely have a significant impact in the game, because you'll get them going both ways, right? And unsportsmanlike foul, which can result in the termination of a player from a game, 2 shots and the ball, has a significant impact on the game. And for it to be so, I'll not say ineptly, but inconsistently applied. I wouldn't, as a coach, if I was out there now, I wouldn't have a clue. There was one in the Manchester Newcastle game today, which I've seen called this season, when kind of there was a turnover and kind of Gordon was just about to start on the fast break and Green got him, and it probably, I don't like the call when they've made it, so I'm probably happy it wasn't. But the fact that it's a different call every time is perplexing and impossible as a coach to handle. So
I just think with some consistency in those, because those are contentious calls. The unsportsmanlike, the technicals are contentious calls. And I think a little bit more room to breathe for the technical. That's if people push it, they push it and they get it. But just a little bit more room to breathe, a little bit more on the thing. And I don't understand why we haven't got video replay, and I think that really does undermine the referees. The fact that there's no video replay.
But it didn't undermine the good refs in the past, right? They had
but in the past, none of us were watching on YouTube going, "That was a goaltend, wasn't it?" And just clicking it back, one click, and it's and we go, "It was a goaltend."
I agree with that. But what I will say is that if in any of these refs listening, I do think there needs to be I have a concern that there is a siege mentality being adopted. And what I mean by that is, that's when I think the communication with players has virtually disappeared. I don't see here's the thing, right? I see particularly the younger, not the youngest, but some of the kind of younger refs, and even kind of the middle generation refs, who are far too quick on that trigger. I looked at, Newcastle played Leicester 2 weeks ago, and Rob was in full Rob mode part of that game. And Chris Dodds was stood next to him, right? And he let him blow himself out. I have heard some of the words that were being used, would have ultimately, could have easily resulted in a technical. And he let him blow himself out. When Atiba went on his little rant, if you remember a few weeks ago, I'm not sure which ref was stood next to him, but they didn't throw him out. They let him blow himself out. And I think there's a level of confidence which comes from having more experienced guys there to manage what is going on, as opposed to the kind of the siege mentality, which you can't challenge me, but even more so, you can't challenge my mate. So look, if Josh Ball gets that call wrong with that ball going out of bounds, right? If he's not happy with what the Eagles bench is saying, he should be the one that calls a technical. If you're Tom Woodman, you've got to close your ears at that point. You got to go across to Josh, because basically there's a few calls, and it's happening in all games. We all see them. There was one at the Sheffield Surrey game where Lloyd got a technical because Del Pesh hammered the ball out of bounds, and literally on an offensive rebound, he hammered it, and they gave it back to Sheffield. And it was a nonsense, because there's it meant to be 3 referees, and that's the at that point, that's where they should all be looking. because that's where the action is. That's it's an offensive rebound. So you look at all the players, and no one went to talk to each other. And Lloyd, and it was just an awful call at a critical point in the game. And again, Lloyd ended up getting a technical. Why? Because they don't like the fact that they're being challenged in relation. They got something awfully wrong. Now, unfortunately, as an experienced ref, you should know which players and when a player is having it on, and when a player is when the whole bench gets up, right? Just
but
like
if they could turn around to Lloyd and say, "I'm going to check it,"
of course,
it all goes away. They
it
get
all
the
goes
right
away.
call,
It all
and he
goes away.
stops
But whilst they
complaining.
can't do that, you shouldn't be doing out technicals.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be doing it, because your reaction, and just like you remember the Derby Caledonia game, the first play of the game, they threw the ball off, threw the ball off the Derby player's foot, and three refs who hadn't got around to actually start to officiate the game yet didn't spot it. Yeah, of course it'd be great if they could check that, but then if we check every out of bounds call down, it's gonna be a long game.
No. But you don't need to check everyone. You don't need to check everyone. And the other thing is, Eurocup, Euroleague, coach challenge.
Yeah, well,
there you go. If he's convinced that's their ball challenge, then it's their ball.
I'm with you on that. I think the coach's challenge, you get one. If you win it, you keep it. If you lose it, you don't. I'm absolutely with you on that. But beyond that, to get to the end of this season, so just to get to solutions briefly, the panel needs to shrink. Bottom line, this is for next year onwards. We can't. I mean, we had a young lad, Harvey West, I think, doing his first game down in Surrey. Okay, the Surrey Sheffield game. Surrey Sheffield
this weekend, Caledonia.
Yes. Sorry, Caledonia. Sorry, my head's gone. Did very well, I thought. Did fine, but it's March. It's the middle of March. It's not the it's not the game with a tremendous amount on. So we can blood them in this game. But my view is, look, you've got a panel of refs for the season, and you pick the panel of refs for the season. And those refs do BBL games, and they don't do NBL games. The times that are doing NBL games is times when they should be getting feedback in relation to BBL games, watching them over, communicating with the people who are supporting them. And if that means you reduce the number and you end up with the more experienced ones, then you let the younger ones, they get their experience in the NBL, and they get managed as well. What this all comes down to is money, of course.
Money, yeah.
Now, two things. One, is 7-7 really serious? Are they serious about investing in London? Are they serious about investing in the quality of everything? Because this was the first time that I've come to the view that, having seen the level of the game that was played on Friday night, and London are bloody good, right? I mean, I don't think I've seen a better team in 30 odd years. Certainly not a deeper team. I think teams can beat them, but in relation to depth and quality of what they do with the star power added in, they're playing at a really high level. And now teams are beginning to raise their game against them as well. So the games have gone suddenly from there to there in relation to level with London involved. Okay. And up until this point, I've never really stuck with the view that, ref standards holding the league back. It's like, no, you don't, Newcastle United don't pack out the ground because of whoever's refereeing that day. It doesn't matter, ultimately. But I am a little bit more concerned that, as the playing standard increases, the gap is left to widen, and the professionalism of everybody else increases, and the professionalism of the officials doesn't. That is setting them up to fail, and that is not on. Yeah. And that is a live concern now. Ultimately, we've always said it's people's livelihoods. Refs have other jobs. You would have a difficulty potentially, probably other jobs that get paid a lot more than what they're doing the BBL for. So you would have to put together some form of scheme, whereby maybe you could, if you didn't want to professionalize immediately, or you didn't want to lose some of the more experienced guys who've got good jobs, whereby you did a kind of a 3 days, you gave them funding for maybe 2 days a week or something like that, to see if they could take time off. So you could have, you could work a job 3 days a week, and then you could be basically concentrate on being a referee for the rest of the week or something like that. But the money has to be provided. Because you can't be expecting people to put themselves under that level of pressure. And to be honest, deal with idiots like me, 3 years back, shouting at them and upset, because it's just wrong, because they're making, because my team's getting stiffed, and everybody thinks their team's getting stiffed.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when I don't shout much, but when they are getting stiffed, I do shout.
Yeah, what I would say is it's not as bad as it looks on Twitter, because not as somebody watches all these games from a neutral standpoint, not everybody's getting stiffed every game.
I agree with that. Yeah, and it's
yeah.
and stiffed is a pejorative word, because it suggests it's not an intent.
Yeah,
and it's not an intent. You know, there's not an intent.
But if you scroll through Twitter, it's easier when it's doing one game. There'll be somebody from one club or the other that will be saying every call is going against them.
Yeah, exactly. It isn't that way, but it's the processes, and it's the structure, and it's the process. And what I'm saying about the processes are, you know, I don't like this idea. I've always been a little bit wary of this idea of the officials as a team. It sounds great, right? It really does. It's in many ways they do have to work together. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There also comes a time, you know, like when Zubcic absolutely wallops the ball out of bounds on the baseline, literally throws it into the crowd, drops his head and goes like that.
Yeah.
And then when Josh Ball walks over to Tom Muddyman and says, "Are you sure?" and he says yes, and Josh says, "All right," walks away. Now at that point, you've got to, if you're in charge, you've got to say, "No, you're wrong." Not, "Are you sure about that?" Because if you knew something different, you wouldn't have gone over to walk over to him in the first place to ask. You know, and it's that type of deference and that type of dynamic that they've got to sort out. You know, with their group. You know, we have this communication all the time. How often this season have you seen on Sportsmanlike speak whereby the refs have huddled together to make a decision? Yeah, 3 seconds to go in the game, no huddle. You know, I don't get the dynamics of it all. And I think it is flawed, unfortunately. And I think that's possibly because they're in different crews every week with different people, and there's no degree of stability, no degree of realistic relationship gathering, if I can put it that way. And at this point in time, they are being set up to fail. And from what I've seen this weekend, they are not as a group, but not as individuals either, but they are not where they need to be. That's what I would say. Yeah. And the reasons for that I've just talked about.
Yeah.
I don't like pylons.
No, neither do I.
People have names.
And as I go back to the original point that we said, most every game, the best team on the court is the referees. The one that makes the fewest mistakes is usually the referees.
Well, what I will say about your video thing is that, you know, when I was growing up, every test match cricket tour abroad was fraught. You know, if you go to Pakistan on a spinning pitch, and the umpire's got no clue whether your players, you know, inside edged one into his pad or not. And who's cheating and who's not. And Mike Gatting's calling the umpire cheating, having to write a letter. You know, and Viv Richards is running around, you know, celebrating a wicket when the ball's come off a guy's thigh pad and the bat's been about 6 feet away. And all sorts of bad feeling kind of creeps in. Now you have Hawkeye, it's gone. They've sorted out, it's gone. Players are all mates now because ultimately they know that there's rules in place, and that to get it right. And so the spats are so minor that they become inconsequential, and we don't have that. And I'm afraid as professionalization improves, if they really want to put forward a product which is at the very highest level, every advantage needs to be given to the officials. Preparation, selection, and technology.
Should we talk some basketball?
Yeah, absolutely. They were crap, weren't they, Dan? Sorry. No, be a fan. They were crap. They're all crap. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Let's start on Wednesday. Manchester Giants 110, Bristol Flyers 99. So I was doing Promitheas on Wednesday night, so I was pleased that this game had a delayed tip-off, because that means I got to listen to the first half on the way home, and by the time I got home I got to watch the whole second half, which was good. So Lee was out, Bell was ill for the Flyers. 16-14 at the midpoint of the first quarter, and then we saw some ones and some 3-pointers from Bristol. They scored 14 unanswered points and were 12 points ahead.
Yeah, Bell pulled a Jamal Anderson, didn't he? Insofar as when Jamal Anderson didn't play, against Caledonia, everybody realised what a good defender he was.
Yeah.
When Thomas Bell didn't play against Manchester, I'm afraid something similar happened because this was a defense-free zone in this game.
Yeah, yeah.
Now it's hard to defend Manchester. Manchester offensively are, very, very smooth, and if their role players are hitting, they become very close to unguardable. But Bristol really didn't make a tremendous commitment to doing it either. And they got suckered into that game of, up and down, run, make shots. And unfortunately, we've seen this year that, the more shots that there are in a game at Manchester, the more likely Manchester are to win it.
Yeah.
And this was, I think, famous. I think this may have been Kofi Joseph's first win in about 4 years. So there's another thing that clicked with me because I don't think he won a game when he was at Plymouth, and he'd been out of the league for a couple of years. But yeah, it was just up and down.
This was a typical NBPC game, wasn't it? It was just there was Lewis and Dirk hitting threes. They got it back to 4, and then you score some points, we'll score some points.
If your defense on Taj Green is just to put your hand up when he's in this triple threat position, he's going to shoot it. And if every single time you do it, you just put your hand up, he's going to keep shooting it. You might miss, but he made 7 of 10 in this game.
Yeah, I think
and their defense.
Delpech's defense was hoping misses, wasn't it?
Well, Delpech isn't a matchup for him. You see, it's not really a fair crack on Delpech because Green's standing there, and he's playing like a guard, and if he's playing like a guard, and you have this with Will Neighbour as well, and some of the other kind of guys in the league, you have to guard them with guards.
And
now you might give up offensive rebounding, and you might give up something at the rim, but you prefer to do that than to let them stand around and bomb threes. And the need was that you've got to get on his hip, you've got to make him dribble to his left, attack the rim, and see if you can do that the whole game. And they didn't. And they paid for it. And I think they 19 threes?
19 of 39 from 3,
19 threes. I mean, they're great shooters. They got great shooters on their team. But you got to take something away if you play in Manchester. And to be honest, the first thing is the 3-point line.
Yeah.
At the rim.
Giants had 7 in a row early in the third quarter, were 59-53 up. And to be honest with you, they made so many threes that they never really looked like they were going to lose the lead, despite, some good play from Ollison and King at the other end.
Yeah, I think what we saw, as I say, was the physical. They missed the physicality of Bell defensively, probably more than Manchester missed Lee, because ultimately Lee's just another guy who does the same thing. And losing Lee doesn't help them score. Doesn't stop them scoring 110 because it just means there's a few more shots for other guys. But they'd probably still score 110 if they had him. And Lee gives them a little bit of block shots. He gives them some block shots as well, albeit gives up some other stuff. So it probably helps him a little bit defensively. But, Bristol, everybody's fallen into that trap in Manchester. We start scoring early and then we're going to get into a scoring race. And, it would be nice to see a team just have the nous to play a different way. We're at that point of the season where the right teams are playing, all teams are basically what they are, and they're playing the way they do. It would be nice to have someone just having those, just to slow the game down. Just to, okay, we're going to pick up Fletcher full court with a bench guy. We're going to try and get into something which is going to disrupt them, and we're going to slow the game down and try and take them out of rhythm. Instead, everybody makes a few shots early. They all feel good about themselves, and then they forget about the onslaught to come.
Green with 32 points, 10 rebounds, 7 of 10 threes. Williams 31 points, 7 of 12 3-pointers. Robertson 17 and 11 rebounds. King 28 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Miller 17 points, 13 assists, 6 rebounds, and Delpech 15. They were 13 of 23 from behind.
Yeah, it's a good game to get your stats. Stats become important in March. You got to get a job in June. Those numbers are being inflated. Everybody's happy. Apart from the coach.
So the other game on Wednesday night, London Lions 89, Promitheas Patras 93. Now, as I say, I was doing a Group A matchup. It looks, by the way, that Lions are going to end up with Badalona.
Great. I mean, they can't beat Sheffield at home, so they've got Badalona away. Happy days.
Yeah. So Prometheus is possible, but and I think Venice is possible as well. But Badalona looks most likely. Still no Kufos for London. This was the one game, because I had 4 games in 4 days. This was the one game I decided was the least important to try and fit everything in. So I've watched bits of this. They started well. They were 10 points up, but it quickly came back to 27 all.
Yeah, well, basically, I told you before, I've lost interest until you get to the quarterfinals now.
That's where you should be in Group A, because Group A is wild right now.
It is okay. Well, I haven't even looked at that.
Yeah.
They've got Oni back, and he's an impactful player for them at that level. But what jeopardy there was, if I'm a London Lions player at this point, I am getting mentally fatigued.
Yeah.
Because I'm playing a lot of games whereby coaches asking me to maintain this standard or that standard. And literally there's no ramifications if I lose.
Yeah.
Right. And coach has to handle whether or not how many minutes people play, because he can't afford injuries.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, they're deep, but in European terms, they're not that deep. Not now. They're early season, Ward Hibbert, Comagum, they're not playing in Europe, and you can't go into these, and they've got maybe 10 guys outside of those at the moment, and that sounds a lot, but it's not for what they're doing and where they're at. And I just think the motivation is, and also finally they haven't won any close games in Europe.
No.
That'd be the biggest concern.
Yeah.
Because they've got people who can finish in the BBL when they've got that kind of talent differential and discipline differential, and they've got fresher legs because they've got a deeper bench, and they're playing against teams who've got players who've been playing 5, 6, 7 minutes more per game than those guys are. But every time they've come up against a solid team in Europe and it's got close, particularly at home, they've not been able to close it.
No.
And that's a concern.
Yeah. So Patras were 3 of 11 from behind the arc in the first half, but then in the third quarter, Joe Thomason hit 2, and Arnaldus Kulbolka got a 4-point play. Cowan hit a 3. They were 10 of 21 from behind the arc in the second half. They got out to 14 points. It was 9 points with 2 minutes to go, and they did manage to get it back to 2 in the last 15 seconds, London, but it never quite looked like they were going to do it. Patras
never had a shot, did they? They never had a shot to kind of tie it or anything like that. As I say, I'm fatigued by that game. I'm mentally fatigued watching that stuff, because it's 2 hours. It's not on YouTube. I can't fast forward it. It's just, and I'm ultimately, I know enough about London now.
Yeah.
So that there's no surprises. Nothing. What about this or what about that?
So let's move on then. Zubcic, 24 points, 9 rebounds, 4 of 8 for threes. Decker, 19 and 8, only 15 points, 5 assists. Cowan, 5 of 7 for 3 for 26
Nigel
points and 11 assists. Kulboka, 14.7 rebounds, and Thomason, 13 points. Let's go to Friday. Let's do Bristol first. Bristol Flyers 99, Plymouth City Patriots 60. Bell was back, but Delpesh was out with a hip injury, and nobody but Bristol fans should have had to watch this one back, I'm afraid to say. They had 18 unanswered points to lead 20-2 after 6.5 minutes. Plymouth didn't get their first field goal till 1:30 on the clock, and that was probably the best of it as well. It didn't get any better.
Yeah, Plymouth. I didn't watch this. I haven't watched this game, Dan. I'm going to be absolutely blunt with you. I haven't watched this game because of what there's only so many things you can do if you're tweeting at 1 o'clock in the morning and it's a Mother's Day weekend. Yeah, and on top of that,
I watched it at 4 times speed.
Well, on top of that, I also decided to prioritize Sam Neater's Hoops Fix podcast with the new GB chairman.
Okay, I've not listened to that
yet. So that I thought was a better use of my time. Yeah. Albeit by the time I'd finished, I wasn't quite so sure. Yeah, I mean, Jelani Watson-Gale plus 39. That must be plus minus of the season.
Yeah.
In 29 minutes. Look, I mean, PJ started 2 players who've been there for 3 weeks. I think they've jumped the shark, Plymouth. Eventually, there's only so many changes. There's only so many times you can put a sticking plaster over things. There's only so much emotion that you can run on before you just run out of it.
Yeah.
And my impression is that's where they're at. And I think, this is where I don't like the signing deadline. The signing deadline should be March, end of March. Because what Plymouth are at the moment is a shadow of what they were in October with the players that they have. And by the time that Bisante and the guy you're going to tell me about is get up to speed, if they're even if they're good enough, and we don't know if they're good enough.
Yeah.
The guys who've been there already all season, they think, no, we've got more people to fit in. We've got to work out how these guys are going to play now. They've lost Bell, who was probably their energy guy. They've lost Williams, obviously, before Christmas, who was also their energy guy. And it's just so tough. Yeah. And whereas Bristol are flowing, because Bristol are the one team that basically hasn't changed.
Yeah, basically.
Hasn't changed.
They missed their first 14 3-point shots, Plymouth. They made 2 in the last minute of the third quarter, which were the first 2, made 3 in total. Ollison, 4 of 6 from 3, 23 points. Mahan, 19, King, 14. Brandon, 12. Bisante, I think it is.
Bisante, yeah. No, that was easy.
11 and 7. Hawthorne, 10.
Yeah, okay.
I'm saving it. I've got it written down, but I'm saving it. Okay. Let's go to Sheffield. Sheffield Sharks 75, Surrey Scorchers 70. Low scoring start to this game. Sheffield had 8 in a row around the first quarter break to lead 19 points to 8.
Yeah. Difficult to find which new to say about.
Flashback to earlier Sheffield's rather than more recent one.
Yeah, but also, Surrey struggled to score. They've put Dobbs in the starting lineup, bringing Martin off the bench. The whole Andrew Lawrence thing continues to utterly mystify me. Didn't play on Friday, but is fit to play on Saturday. You tell me. I'm just perplexed by all that. I don't think that helps anybody personally, either in or you're out, you're fit or you're not. So they end up with, obviously McFoley, who Sheffield have seen twice already, and they're not going to let him get away with a lot of the stuff. With his skill set. So Sheffield were ready for them defensively, I think. Sheffield have, I'm saying this before tonight's game, Sheffield have kind of regrouped on the fly pretty well. They've become a far more pleasing on the eye team. Their spacing fits better. It fits the skill sets of the players that they've got better. And they haven't given up that much defensively. They have given up a little bit, but not that much. And their season is, I think, going to depend on, or basically their season is what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Their season is going to be on how good Ramsey is. If Ramsey is, and the reason I say how good he is because he's still only been here 2 months. You can't judge a point guard in his first 2 months. You can if you can find out if he can play or not. You know that within the first 10 minutes, and Ramsey can play. The question is, how much of a kind of get me over the top type of guy? How much of a leader type of guy is he? How much of a big player at the right time type of player is he? Every game, and if he has that, then and they have that hierarchy, because at the moment they've got a bit of your turn, my turn going on. Once that hierarchy sorts itself out and everybody knows where the ball's going at the end of the game, they're going to be pretty dangerous because they're peaking. Sorry.
Well, let me just do the landmark first. 8:51, second quarter. Teo Ogundengbe in the corner, head fake, corner 3, 4,000 points. For Surrey Scorchers.
And how many on corner threes, Dan?
A lot, I think. A lot. He's the 10th player in league history to do that for a single club. And actually, it was a meaningful basket as well, because it sparked a 9-0 run and got them going a little bit offensively and back into the game.
So who leads that category? Who leads that category?
Must be
Charles.
Charles, yeah, probably Charles.
Yorick played around, didn't he? So
yeah, Yorick played around. I did. Charles. To be honest with you, I noticed it last week, so I'd actually sent the club the heads up on it, and I'd worked out that he was 10th, but I can't remember. I'm guessing it would be Darius, Charles.
We presented Charles with a 7,000 points.
Yeah. No, in terms of doing the 10, Gene Waldron would probably be on there as well.
Good question.
Yeah. Did Tuck get to 4,000 or was he 3,000 something or other? I can't remember.
I think he might have got to 4,000 because he didn't have to wait about. It was a Sheffield record.
Yeah,
you had to wait 3 months to break the Sheffield record.
Yeah.
Eventually, got down on his knees and prayed.
And then hit one at the top of the
key straight away again. Yeah, that's right. No, it's interesting. The one thing I'll say about Theo, and it's a quick word, is that when he came to the league, he couldn't shoot.
No.
He was a young leaping jumper. Obviously he was at Surrey. I think he went to London Capital for a year.
Was it London Capital United? Or London United? It was one of the two. He
played for Tony G. I think it was London Capital.
It was his first season was at one of those London clubs, and I can't remember which one it was.
Pretty sure it was Capital. And because London United played in that Hackney place where you had to put your guns in the tray as you went.
The space.
Yeah, the space. Yeah, you got your metal detected as you went in. Yeah, as Darius called it, it's home. Remember, and Tony recruited like Tony Dorsey for that team, Tony G, and Perry Lawson and people like that. I went down as a fan, couldn't get in without 4 forms of ID. But that is longevity is a real skill, given everything that is thrown at you in British basketball. And the one thing you say about Theo is, and you can say about a few of those other guys as well, who you see on that list, is they are literally getting better with age. I mean, Charles won the MVP at 39. And the reason they get better with age is that because they are they committed to their craft. You don't keep that body. You don't keep Theo's body. As you and me know, you don't keep it like this. Right? If you don't put the work.
I think I had it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one thing, and a lot of players kind of say they put the work in, or a lot of players think they put the work in, but there's a separation between those who really, really, really put the work in and those who don't. And that separation is generally longevity. That's a big thing. You're lifting weight. If you can keep the motivation to go in there and lift weights when you're 38 or 37 or 44, like my guy, you can do that every day. You keep that motivation. That is a hell of a skill because you learn all the little tricks. People are always ready to pension people off and pension off the knowledge that they have, and they understand, and don't necessarily understand how valuable that knowledge, that understanding of the game is. You've got a 21-year-old kid. We all want to see him get better. We all want to see him improve, but he's going to make mistakes. And and whereas a 35-year-old who knows his game and knows exactly what he does isn't. And we're a bit too quick to pension people off. So keep going, Theo.
Sheffield then 10-0 run to open out, double-figure lead again. Johnson McFoley got Surrey back and actually ahead midway through the third quarter, but Rotino and Ramsey pushed Sheffield out. It was 55-43 with 9 minutes to play. And to be honest with you, I didn't really write anything down at the end. It was one of those games where Surrey kept playing, kept going. They made a couple of threes late on, but I never thought they were going to win the game.
No, they won comfortably. I thought this was, to be honest, I'm pretty inconsistently reffed as well. I'll be honest, this game. I was maybe a bit jaundiced from the Friday game when I was watching it, but I thought it was inconsistently reffed. There was one time, when both coaches are annoyed with you on the, generally an indication that things aren't going perfectly. And it was when I think McFoley was pushed in the back by Glasgow and there was no call, and then down the far end Nelson took 2 steps and got hammered and somehow a side
ball, and he was actually in the air.
And it's like in the air and the rest pointing at the sideline, and that's happened now 4 or 5 times this year. And I'm just wondering, is there some form of rule that I don't know?
Maybe,
because we all know the borderline ones. Has he gathered it? Has he not? But after they've taken 2 steps and he's in the air, I mean, argument, he was passing it. Well, he clearly wasn't passing it, just nonsense. So that doesn't help. Then, like as I say, then there was this awful call at the end, and I thought it was Ryan Martin got called for a slightly dodgy block as well. An awful call on the out of bounds play where the reaction of everybody immediately tells you that you've got it wrong. And no one had the cojones to go and say, look, we got this one wrong. Instead, they ended up giving a technical. you know,
Yeah.
and that, you know, as you say, that's a video replay thing that sorts it out straight away. But they compounded the error, and I felt for Lloyd about that, to be honest, because you know, the annoying thing is when you know you've had the same angle as the refs.
Yeah.
And it's clear as day. And I mean, Delpesh basically spiked the ball out of bounds. You know, and you know that, and then you're thinking, right, what are we running? And then you suddenly see the ref pointing the wrong way. You know, you're thinking, what is going, you know, what's going on here? And it is frustrating. It's not a deliberate mistake, but it's, you know, it's solvable. But you know, as I say, technical at the end of it because he whinges too much. How about just get on with the game, walk away, don't listen to him. What good does it do?
Rotino's 16-7, Ramsey 13-7, Nichols 13. Johnson 10 of 10 field goals for 21 points and 8 rebounds. McFarley
He did really
80.
well.
Yeah.
Really well, Johnson. I mean, obviously 10 of 10, that's pretty self-evident.
Yeah. Ogundengby 10. So let's go to the game that gave you the ire at 1 o'clock in the morning. Newcastle Eagles 85, London Lions 88. London the first 7 points of the game, but Hamlet, as he did earlier in the season against the Lions, kept the Eagles right with them in the first quarter.
Yeah, London didn't have Oni, and they were playing around a bit the first half. Their defense wasn't there. Coach Smith started Comagum and Sulit Solowade, and basically once the game got serious in the second half, Solowade didn't play, I don't think, and Comagum might have played a minute. But he started those guys, and they got in Newcastle started a little bit slow, but their energy was right. And they're a little bit undermanned because they're obviously they're an import down because they've used all their imports and they've only got 4, and obviously Mockford down as well. So they're not quite what they were. I think they would like to be for the way that they play to play that degree of energy because they don't have. They have scorers, but they people kind of take turns to score, and the energy in the place. But you know, everybody's coming across London. Everybody's seeing London. Now it's March, right? So everybody sees London as an opportunity to get a highlight tape against a team that's playing.
Yeah.
Let's be absolutely blunt about this. Everybody's now looking to next year if you're not playing on London. And if you are playing on London, you look to see if London are going to sign you again next year. That's where these games are at. Oh yeah, the guys are trying to win, but you know, you've got a bunch of employees who are out of contract in 6 weeks' time. That's it, you know. So they're trying to do the very best they can to make sure that they've got a job next year. And what better way to do it across the whole of Europe than to be able to put a tape together saying this is what I did against a Euro Cup team. Yeah, everybody knows what Euro Cup teams are.
Yeah.
Now in relation to London, I really enjoyed watching them close up because I haven't seen them since September or October when they played up there last, and they weren't perfectly formed at that point at all. And I think actually the injuries that they've got now kind of have perfectly formed them insofar as there's no dead minutes there. You know, Comagum is mainly the only one who maybe you wouldn't say is necessarily a BBL starter yet, but he's certainly a BBL role player. The rest of them are all BBL starters on a good team, and obviously some of them are a lot higher level than that. In fact, most of them are a lot higher level than that. So watching them play was, you know, the physicality was quite entertaining, but also watching Newcastle actually, you know, play fearlessly and take it to them was fun because Newcastle, despite their record, are actually now not a bad team. In fact, you know, it's a credit to the coach that he's got them kind of going, despite the fact that they're 7-20 or whatever they are, because in the last 3 weeks they played Bristol and should have beat them on the last minute on the 2 shots and 9 seconds to go. They beat Leicester and then they beat London. So that tells you that at home in particular, that they're running stuff and that they're doing all right. And it was fun watching them go. And Hamlet is a utterly polarizing player for me. Absolutely polarizing. He is as gifted a scorer as we've probably seen in a while in relation to the ways that he scores. Not a shootout scorer. And in this game, he took it to London. He scored, you know, off his left foot, off his right foot, you know, with the floater, with his lanes. He's just incredibly skillful, but he's also flaky defensively. And Mark was constantly having to when he got a call he didn't like, and he's trying to talk to the refs. Mark was constantly having to say to him, "Look, I'll talk to the refs. You just concentrate on the game. You just concentrate on the game all that time." But in this game, he played an incredible game against a high-level team with proper defensive players who were, but at some point, were ready to shut him down. And the rest of Newcastle kind of followed that. And they've got a bunch of players, Newcastle, who are all really solid basketball players, but they all have their own little flaws. Whereas, and the difference in what they have and what London have is that if you're London, you're paying for guys without those little flaws.
Yeah.
So in relation to Cohen, it's is he going to be able to make a play at the end when his team needs him? Is he going to be able to get his own shot? In relation to Hamlet, is he going to be able to remain mentally kind of focused on it? In relation to French, is he going to be able to finish around the rim? Because he defended him and Gordon defended Decker better than anybody I've seen all season, on the perimeter until the last 3 minutes. But French in particular, you think he's a centre, he's a great big guy. There's no way he can defend Decker. He did a great job. He made him miss. And he blocked him at the rim once on the one-on-one, which I haven't seen all season. But he's flawed because he's not able to finish at the rim very well. So you get that. And then the bench guys are up and down, and we've talked about Kennedy and who we are. So when they put it all together, and when they're the best versions of themselves, they're actually pretty darn good. And in the first half, they basically went toe-to-toe with London. Luke Nelson just coming back into it. He was a bit out of rhythm. Newcastle's still flawed. I mean, they couldn't guard Aaron Best. I mean, I've watched him 40 games this season and seen him curling left off the top and watching him curl left off the top 4 times in a row. I wanted to throw a little duck on the court before the end of the third quarter. Most frustrating because, you've got to have an idea of, the scouting point. Newcastle's defense wasn't great and London's defense wasn't great either. And then in the third quarter, Coach Smith stopped kind of messing around and he started with Nelson and Best and he started with his 5. And they came out for 2 minutes and they absolutely paralyzed Newcastle with their defense. And then Gordon made a 3 from a corner in the corner, which was pretty important. Because if he hadn't, I think they could have held them scoreless for a bit longer. It got Newcastle back into rhythm. And
so
at that
you've just jumped forward. So Defoe 6 and an 11-0 run, 33-31 got them.
Darius was brilliant, by the way, in this game.
And then where you're at now, Gordon and Defoe, Eagles 13-3 run, and they're up 11 in the third quarter, 66-55.
Yeah, and they did a good job, Newcastle, of actually going to where their advantages were. And that was, if Commingham or Ward Hibbert or somebody's guarding Darius, they gave him the ball and he scored. And that degree of kind of, and then that degree of leadership and defense really kind of helped up. And then Best got into foul trouble in the third quarter. He got certainly at least one pretty cheap call, I thought, but he got into 4 fouls. And Coach Smith is still managing minutes because he's playing Wednesday, Sunday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, whatever. It's almost like they could have done without the trophy final. So they've got all that going on as well. And Newcastle are getting the game from everybody. What happened was, unfortunately, they couldn't withstand it at the end of the third quarter.
Lions scored the last 8 points to make it a 5.
Yeah, I mean, they got on the end of a couple of calls at the end of the third quarter as well. If anyone wants to go back on the tape and watch Jordan Taylor faking a pass in the backcourt, picking the ball up, and then dribbling it again, and then dribbling it again and throwing it to Herban for a 3. Whilst the ref standing there looking at it. That was a big play in the game because it kind of, Newcastle needed an edge at the end of the third quarter, I think, having worked so hard to get one, and they weren't quite able to sustain it. And obviously they had the whole thing with Hamlet at the beginning of the fourth quarter, which of all the calls, unfortunately, was the one which was the most impactful, determinative of the game.
So Herban and Best with 3s to make it 72-71, but then Hamlet made 5 points, 77-71, 5:53 to go. Hamlet is in the corner. Newcastle in sort of semi-transition.
Yeah, got fouled.
And Hamlet is called for an offensive foul. Zubcic challenges the shot. Hamlet is called for an offensive foul. So let me
wait, Dan, 1 second. At Shields Brief on Twitter, if anybody wants to watch the clip.
Yeah.
Okay, right. It's
It's on the
there.
screen. It's on the screen
It's on the.
if you're watching on YouTube. So let me talk through the rule here, and then I'll give a little narrative as we go through it as well. This is rule 33.6. A player who is in the air. The rule is called. A player who has jumped into the air from a place on the court has the right to land again in the same place. That's line one. He lands with his heels just inside the 3-point line. It's a 3-point shot. So this doesn't apply to this rule because he doesn't land in the same place.
Same place, yeah.
He has the right to land on another place on the court, providing that the landing space and the direct path between takeoff and landing place is not already occupied by an opponent at the time of takeoff. So at the point of takeoff, the nearest person in a direct path in front of Hamlet is Sam Decker. Sam Decker is about a step outside the key at that point in time, the point at which, because I've run this back myself, the point at which that Hamlet takes off the ground, he by the ruling, he's got about 12 feet of space in front of him that he's allowed to jump into by rule. Good luck jumping 12 feet. Maybe you should be a long jumper if you can get that far. But the next line of the rule is, if a player has taken off and landed, but his or her momentum caused him or her to contact an opponent who is legally guarding position beyond the landing place, the jumper would be responsible for the contact. So this would be Decker. So in the event that Decker had stayed where he was, he actually runs up to cover Cohen, who Zubcic has helped off. But if Decker had stayed where he was and Hamlet could jump 12 feet forward, then it would have been a foul on Hamlet.
If he karate kicked him, basically.
It would have been a foul on. We had a similar one last year, I think it was, where it was Leicester against Glasgow, and there was some question about Boban's feet or whatever. So here's the next line. An opponent may not move into the path of a player after that player has jumped into the air. So Zubcic, at the point that Hamlet has left his feet, Zubcic is standing on the logo of the Virtue Motors
miles away
arena. Literally got his foot on the little low shieldy, whatever it is, of the logo.
It's the foul line, isn't it? Almost.
So that, by my reckoning, is somewhere in the region of 2 feet inside the 3-point line and maybe 6 feet above Hamlet in terms of the length of the court. So not in front of him and not in the position that Hamlet eventually lands in.
And not close.
No, not even close. No, if he was lying down, I don't think he would be able to touch the floor where Hamlet lands.
He's a big lad.
Lying, and he's big and long.
Yeah.
So it can only be that Zubcic has gone into the place where he is allowed to land. He is allowed to jump forward at the point of takeoff, and that's the important bit. At the point of takeoff, he is allowed land anywhere in front of him that is not currently occupied by a player in a legal defensive position, which there was nobody. So any contact has to be Zubcic coming in. So it has to be, my view, a 3-shot foul. It has to be, unless potentially he lands first and then it's an after shot. But in my view, it was on the land and therefore it's a 3-shot foul.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and to be honest, and what it was what the ref called was the kick out. He said that he kicked out with his leg.
But the kick out is about him being in front. So if he's in front and he kicks his leg forward in a legal position and he kicks his leg forward to initiate contact, that's the second bit of the line. But if the player's momentum causes him to hit somebody, then the jumper is responsible for the contact.
And even then, the kick out is for the guy, and we saw, I put a clip up of Sam Decker kicking out, literally kicking out, for the guy who makes contact in the air with a player. You know, if you're basically, you're not going to land in a certain place, you're not going to land back where you start, but the guy flies past you and you stick your leg way out there, so he knocks into you. Yeah. Right? Then that becomes a foul. Now, there was no contact on the kick out in this case because there was no contact until they landed.
Yeah. And also the kick out is more about if you're going sideways because you've missed the guy and you're trying to initiate contact.
Trying to draw a foul. Yeah. Now, the problem is, and I absolutely, I'll be called a liar on this, but my intuition, for what it's worth, after 6,000 games of basketball this season, tells me that call 2 minutes before the end of the third quarter, where Hamlet got called for an outrageous flop warning. It was either an offensive foul or a defensive foul, but it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it was a defensive foul. But he got an outrageous flop warning. I'm quite whenever a ref gives a flop warning, he has to tell his two mates there's a flop warning, so they know the next time is a technical.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Also, you've got a break in the play, so you've got a situation where the refs have communicated about that. So the first wrong call leads to the ref being on the alert for that. And unfortunately, whether it's pressure, whether it's experience, or whether it's just misreading, or whether it's not knowing the rules, being on an alert for something led to it being called. Now that's in my view, it's a prejudgment situation. It's where you're being impacted by something that's happened before instead of calling what's in front of you because you're looking for it, and it's human, right? It's a natural thing, but it doesn't help, and that's where I talk about the improvement in processes. It was an awful call, but it was an awful call which had a devastating impact on that game because it took away 3 foul shots and it took away Newcastle's player who scored 30 points in 25 minutes.
Yeah,
and they don't have enough, unfortunately. We saw it again tonight, to continue to score without their major guys on the court. And when Defoe fouled out, the next probably a minute later, and there was
it was 30 seconds later. I thought that was a foul. I don't know.
He reached down. I couldn't quite see where he reached down on the ball. I thought the 5th one was a foul. I didn't think the 4th one. I thought the 4th one was dubious, but that's when he got his elbow at the chin. But anyway,
I thought that was a foul as well.
Yeah, you did. I thought. I might agree with you on that, but I thought it was unsportsmanlike afterwards. But he hit him with an elbow. But nevertheless, that was less consequential than Hamlet, the way he was playing.
Yeah.
Not getting those 3 foul shots.
Yeah,
and also being
potentially making it a 9-point game with 6
a
minutes
9
to
point,
play.
6 minutes to get on him.
Yeah.
And now
what I will say, just, but let me pick up on that, because what I did was I went on to Synergy and played back his 5 fouls to have a look at that. The 5th foul is a terrible call, as we've established. Foul number 1 and foul number 4 were both poor closeouts by him, landing space fouls. So he can take those away. Foul number 2 was a completely needless bump in transition for no obvious reason. And the 3rd was unnecessary as well. He was just sort of riding Best.
It was a riding one, but to be fair, Best got the same call at the other end.
Yeah.
So,
but what I'm saying is he can take the other 4 away.
Oh yeah, and which is why I say that they're all flawed. There's a flaw. His flaw is that he is flaky in relation to his game management. He is as gifted a scorer as we've seen in a long time. But he is constantly battling something, and it's not coming easy to him. And that's it, being young. He had junior college, then 2 years in college, and basically didn't play last year. In reality, played 4 games in France and then played 8 minutes a game in the G League. So this is the first time he's really ever been in a pro situation with a degree of pressure on, playing at this level and having to manage everything. And there are times he manages it really well, and there are times that he struggles because he has the talent level to be playing not just at this level but at a high level. And one of the things I was really and Jordan Taylor really impresses me. Right, Jordan, and we watched this game. Hadn't seen him up front. He was, I thought he was outstandingly poised, compact, competent. He's doing what he had to do, not unflustered. A guy who's played for Galatasaray, a guy who's played for all these teams in Europe, and he's seen it all, done it all. The end of the game, and obviously Newcastle are kind of desperate and a bit disappointed. He made a point of actually just singling out Hamlet and just saying, "Hey, good job." He actually went across, or maybe they just passed as they were walking past, but I saw it. He said, "Hey, good job." And Hamlet went, "Yeah, thanks." So he knows game, and also, it showed that, I can see why he's a team leader for a good team, although his maturity throughout the whole game was great. Now, the way ultimately Newcastle lost this game because of that their defense effectively at the end of the game couldn't handle it. Gordon, again, a little bit flaky defensively, in his decision making, made an absolutely incredible decision to leave Decker in the corner to go and help on the weak side.
Let me just get there. So 3:21 to go. Decker misses 2 free throws. He'd only
Yeah.
got 9 points at that stage.
Yeah. Well, the defending great.
Yeah, and then this is the point you're talking about. 2:15 to go. Decker with the corner 3. It's 82-83 timeout Eagles.
It's an awful decision by Gordon. He stepped 2 feet inside the paint, and he's got Decker in the corner, and it's like that's a foul shot, and he just missed 2. It's a layup for Decker. At that point in the game, he's never going to miss. And unfortunately, the moment that it was one of those games, the moment that London got in the lead, because Newcastle didn't have Hamlet, you couldn't see Newcastle. With that lineup at the end, which is all they had really, which was Cohen, Kyle Johnson, Kennedy, French, and Gordon. It's like, where's the shot coming from? Who's going to be able to get a score? And they couldn't quite find anybody to do that. And defensively, as I say, they gave up another 3 to Decker as well.
1:52 to go. Kennedy misses a 3. French with the offensive rebound gives it to Kennedy, who steps on the sideline. 1:39 to go. Top of the key. Decker for 3. 82-86. Then Cohen misses a 3. Decker late in the shot clock. Well challenged by Gordon this time. Misses the 3. 38 seconds to go. This is the one where Cohen spins down the lane and tries to just spin it off the glass, and he's
got to make it.
Yeah,
he's got to make that shot. I mean, he knows he's got to make it. What I will say is that at the end of the day, Cohen was playing the whole second half. The problem that they have is that they don't have that extra ball handler, and the minutes that you look at the minutes at the end of the game, and the Eagles guys are 6 and 7 minutes kind of more than the Lions guys, and that makes an impact on whether you can make plays at the end of the game.
At the end of the game,
particularly when you've got the amount of pressure that Cohen has on him and to run that team, because he has to run that team.
There's a 14-second differential between shot and game clock. Eagles opt to play defense. Lions run it down. Best is fouled on the baseline. 17.8 seconds to go. He makes 1 of 2. It's a 5-point lead. 82-87. Timeout, advance the ball. Johnson misses a 3, but it goes out of bounds for an Eagles possession. And then 7.4 seconds to go. Josh Ward-Hibbert fouls Gordon on the corner 3. He makes all 3 free throws, and it's a 2-point game again, 85-87.
Yeah. I didn't think that. I would kind of resign to it at this point. They fouled. Did they foul?
So they timeout, advance the ball. I thought French lost a couple of seconds here. I thought he could have fouled a bit quicker.
Did, maybe, yeah.
Zubcic misses the first, makes the second, 85-88. They've got no timeouts, so they have to go live.
Sorry, just on that French foul, I did watch it back because someone mentioned to me that they thought it might have been on sportsmanlike, but it wasn't. I mean, he literally poked about an inch away from the ball when he poked through Zubcic. I don't know if you remember that call.
Well, I didn't look at it and
no, well, he literally poked through Zubcic's eye. Poked, so it wasn't unsportsmanlike.
Anyway. So then there's the one, and we've discussed this offline, the Nelson foul. Now my take in real time, and I make the judgment on the real time first time I watch it rather than the replays and all of that, because the referees don't have that, so they have to make it in real time. I didn't think it was an unsportsmanlike. I thought it was borderline, and I thought it was a massively risky move from Luke Nelson to do that. And had it gone to video, the angle from the baseline really didn't look very good in terms
which part of the criteria did you not think was made out?
I thought he was near enough to the ball to be making a play on the ball.
And what in the criteria is in transition a deliberate foul without a play being made on the ball?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. The deliberate foul to without playing on the ball to stop the transition. But it's to me, it was one of those, like, if you think of it as a penalty in football, where you get those sort of like borderline ones that if the penalty is given by the referee, VAR is not going to overrule it. And if it's not given by the referee, the VAR is not going to overrule it. So whether it's given or not it's perspective, isn't it? That's the thing.
Here's where I'm at. London had a foul.
Yeah.
Coach probably told him to take that foul.
Yeah.
If Nelson had got Kennedy he was trying to take a charge by stepping in front of him, fine, trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Nelson had reached in when Kennedy was in front of him, when the ball's there.
Yeah.
Trying to make a play. Once Kennedy puts the ball on his outside hand.
Yeah.
Right outside his outside hand and gets past Nelson, so he's effectively side onto him. He has no shot of playing the ball. And that at that point, in my view, everybody in the building knew it was a deliberate foul. So the issue is, as you say, was there a play on the ball? Was it like, but and I've talked about this a lot. Was it one where he is close enough to the ball where he can say, I'm happy to foul him, but I was still trying to get the ball.
Yeah.
Right? That's the call, basically. I don't mind if I foul him, but I'm trying to get the ball. Now, this is where basketball, what information goes through a referee's head at that point, right? What information should go through a referee's head at that point? I don't know the answer to that, right? But I know what I know as somebody who's ref games, coach games, played in games, whatever. I know what Nelson was trying to do. I know the situation of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that leads me to believe that that is a deliberate foul. And I have to say, I don't know. And this is probably the only thing which nags at me about the whole situation with London and the caliber of the players that they have. And it nagged at me again today with Decker not getting his technical. Right? It nagged at me when I saw Decker kick out at Gordon on the jump shot, that the ref's standing there looking at it and doesn't call that as a foul, even when Gordon goes down on his knee. Not saying it's deliberate, but that's, he kicked out when he hit Gordon as he was shooting the ball. That's a foul. What nags at me is, is that call made the other way? Right? Is that call made for any other team in the league playing against London? If Newcastle are up 3 and they make that play, are they called? If Sheffield are up 3 and they make that play, are they called? And is there a little bit of deference, a little bit of reputation, a little bit, and it's a common and understood theme in the NBA, superstars get called.
Yeah.
So I'm not making up anything here.
No.
What I'm doing is, but the problem is we've never had it in this league.
No.
We've never had superstars to that degree, with that degree of reputation in this league. So it's new. And that the one thing that nags away at me is that, it takes, going back to that phrase again, it takes balls, and that'd be a Neil Wilkinson call. Tell you what, Neil Wilkinson called, I'm telling you, I would not have been scared. It takes balls to step up and to put all that stuff out of your head and say, no, you can't do that to me, Sam Deck, with 30 seconds to go in that game tonight and bang the floor. No, Luke Nelson, you might be GB's best player, but that's a foul. That you deliberately fouled somebody who's in transition away from you, and I don't think you made any attempt to play the ball because the state of the game tells me that you're trying to foul him. And that's probably the closest I've ever come to a conspiracy. But it's a regular and understood phenomenon in basketball. Stars get called. And at some point, London have been outstanding this year. They've kind of swept through the BBL like a benevolent dictator. It's like the Americans going into Afghanistan, win hearts and minds and all that stuff. And we're going to take over your country, but you're going to enjoy it and we're going to be nice to you, that type of thing. But don't get anything wrong. London's players are very good, but they're also got an edge, right? They have a real edge to them. And the coach, quite properly, has a real edge to him. And they have to, because that's how you win in professional sport. You don't win by just being nice and glad-handed and shaking, never mind, whatever. You say the right things before, you say the right things after. But in the second half of that game, there was no messing around with funny lineups. Coach Schmidt was coaching every single player of that game to win, right? Sam Decker, he was not struggling, but he had 9 points. French had blocked him. Gordon and French were in his face. They're two of the only guys in the league athletically who can probably stay close to him. He stepped up. Their competitive edge kicked in, right? And they can't kind of be treated as, they're just, Sam's just here to play the game and to do is be nice and smile at everybody and be a fantastic ambassador for the sport. All of that he is, right? But that stops when he's on the court, right? And I'm a little bit worried that that's transferring through to the way that he's being handled compared to everybody else. He should have got a technical tonight, and that's. And I didn't. I was going to say this before tonight's game. He should have got a technical tonight, no question. He should have got. And And in my view, Luke Nelson should have been called for that. But as I say, I don't know. It's a hypothetical question. I can't possibly say whether it would happen the other way around. And it'd be a different ref, a different time, maybe one with a different mentality. I think Keith would have called it. But that's where we're at. So it was a fantastic game. It really opened my eyes a little bit. It actually probably the only game that's actually changed my kind of understanding. Changed my ideas about the league going forward, because I was very much of the London Death March thing, which is, I'm not sure this is going to be a good thing. Next 2 years down the line, I can see this becoming decidedly uncompetitive very quickly. It demonstrated to me that, with the right, with I think a little bit more investment from each club, and it might be another 100,000 on each club's budget, that there's a capability of challenging, certainly at home, challenging a team like London. We've seen it with Sheffield. We've seen it with a few other teams recently with well-run programs. I do think that there's probably still going to be a need for some form of dispersal of finances to improve everybody else a little bit. And I think a luxury tax or something of that nature would not be a bad thing. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I think it would be a very good thing, because I think there has to be an understanding that 25-point blowouts every week are not good. But I watched a really high-level game. It was a really high-level game. Even though London were playing at maybe 70% for most of it, certainly the first half. But watching Javian Hamlet score the ball the way he did, with the variety of moves he did, that was really high level. Watching Wojciech Herban come off screen, boom, boom. He's playing at a level with. I've not seen a 6'6" guy play like that in the BBL. Not with his economy of movement, his quality of shooting, and that's without even getting to Decker and Jordan Taylor and guys like that. So I enjoyed it. I'm obviously more of a purist than most. I watch more, so I probably know a little bit more about what I'm watching than a lot of people. But I still enjoyed it. And if we can get to that, and we can get that, as I say, that little bit more funding across the board, just to even it up just slightly, not a lot, but just slightly. And to also invest in the refs and to pay the players a little bit more so England is seen as a really positive destination. And we get games like that every week, then I'm all for it.
The foul was a sideline ball, by the way, 3.9 seconds. Cohen had a heave on the buzzer, which almost banged in, to be fair to him, but didn't.
Of course, if that ridiculous technical hadn't been called in the first half.
Oh, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I don't buy that 1 point in the first half, because you would have played the last 2 minutes in a different way. I
don't think you would, actually. I do. I don't buy it until the last possession. I buy it in the last possession. What I do see is that there are always calls which balance it out. Yeah. But just like the game last week against Bristol, where they gave up 2 points on the buzzer of the first quarter because they couldn't get the ball over half court with 4 seconds to go. Those 2 points do matter.
With 2 minutes to go, they would have been 2 points closer or worse off or whatever.
Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, maybe the opposition played different.
They would have took different shots at that.
But all I'll say is that 3 points. I think 3 points matter.
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from on that. I've managed not to write down the scorers, so I'm just looking at the live stats now. Hamlet, 11 of 14 for 30 points in 24 minutes, 16 points and 8 rebounds for Gordon, 13 points for Defoe, and London had 17 points for Decker and 15 points each for Zubcic and Taylor, who also had 7 assists as well. So let's come to the game I was at, the Sky Sports game on Friday night. Yeah, we're still on Friday. We need to pick the pace up here, I think.
Pick the pace up,
yeah. Leicester Riders 84, Caledonia Gladiators 81. Adekoya and Washington still out. Fraser didn't travel. Tape was dressed but didn't play. Basically score for score in the first quarter. First real run was in the second quarter, where Leicester scored 11 in a row to 37-24, during which time Ali Hodzic got his second technical that we've already really talked about and was DQ'd. But that kind of fired Caledonia up. They went on an 11-0 run and made it a 2-point game.
Both teams are in transition. You can see it. Leicester, signed 4 American point guards this year, and the best one is British. That's probably where you're at. And and you see Walsh and Bowman getting minutes that perhaps they wouldn't get if they were in a slightly better place in relation to the level of talent if they were competing for the league. Not that they can't play, they can play. But you see that, you've got young British guys there, as I say, Bowman, Menzies, and Walsh, who are getting the opportunity to play in the system, and probably getting more rope than they otherwise would. They were still missing Adekoya, were they, in this
Yeah,
game?
yeah, and Washington.
Yeah, so he's a loss as well. Washington is obviously a massive loss. We've talked about him, but Caledonia, whoa, they've got a cup final coming up, trophy final coming up. And that has to impact what they're doing with Tapie. You then have the uncontrollable thing with Ali Hodzic. You then have Onwas getting hurt, and you have Bailey having a brain freeze. And you put all of those things together, and they end up playing with Fraser Malcolm as a 5 for the last 17 minutes, which I thought thoroughly entertaining.
Yeah.
It actually got my attention. Actually, it's like, oh, this is different. So it's nice watching something different after 6 months of watching the same. And then you end up with a lineup where you've got Durham's playing the power forward putatively. It was really, in that gave Leicester a ton of problems. So that became a really
so 2 minutes into the third quarter, Bailey an absolutely ridiculous fifth foul. I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah, go on.
A minute later, Onwas, as you say, rolled his ankle, was out. So they were well short-handed. There were people doing weird sorts of things, but despite their lack of height, actually Leicester had to match them because they couldn't make advantage of it.
Yeah, it was small v big, and I mean, I was on 4-player watch at some point. I was saying, oh my god, one more foul's out. I think we're in the 5v4, we're in like Leopards and Donald and stuff like that. There's nothing better than 5v4 live on Sky, is there, Dan? Even Lasker's not seen that before. Sadly, they were too disciplined, the 5 that were there. But I mean, if you're running a team with Sloan, Jimenez, Bunyan, Durham, and Fraser Malcolm, as I say, playing as your stretch 5, it does cause some problems. The problem I think for Caledonia was ultimately if they'd had that lineup for 12 minutes, I think they might have survived it. But 17 was just a little bit too much physically. It takes a lot out of you to be playing that.
Let's get to the end. 2 minutes to go. It's a tied game. Whelan drives down the middle and scores in traffic, 76-78. Malcolm misses a 3. Good luck. Sloan with the offensive rebound. Durham steps into a 3, 79-78. They lead Caledonia with 1:38 to go. Sloan with a foul sideline. Mackenzie drives at Bunyan, puts Leicester back ahead. And then Sloan with a miss 3, Mackenzie rebound. And you're thinking, oh, Leicester are surely going to pull away here in the last few seconds. But Mackenzie misses, gets his own rebound, drives and misses again. And then Sloan right down the middle. Great play by Jackson with 30 seconds.
Yeah, he got a finger on the ball, didn't he?
Yeah. Love him with the rebound. He's fouled, but it's a baseline ball. And then it gets into whether Leicester can make free throws in the last 20 seconds. It was like the whole minute of nothing, no scores, but lots going on, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I didn't know the score of the game when I watched it. It struck me that, both teams have bigger fish to fry insofar as Caledonia have the trophy final and Leicester are trying to figure out what they've got for the playoffs, basically, as to who's going to be playing. Basically, is Nelson Henry going to be in shape? Is Menzies going to get lots of minutes? Is it going to be Walsh or Bowman off the bench? What they're going to do with Love, because Love has regressed since he got there, and having to figure that out. And so they're to my mind, they're fighting a few fires, not in a kind of burn your house down type of way, but in kind of, be careful with the chip pan type of way. And anything to get started. So they're managing that, and Caledonia, obviously the game is just a mess for them because of bad luck, bad reffing, indiscipline, and Ali Fraser not even making the trip, So that became a little bit of a junk game. I don't mean that about. I mean, what I mean by junk game is it's like you're never going to see this game play out again.
No.
It doesn't. You don't get much. You don't. If you're a coach, you don't get much from it. I don't imagine even ever voluntarily Gareth is going to go to that lineup. It actually worked because
Yeah,
it does. Because you do stuff like that, and it does work because it throws everybody off, and and ultimately you make enough shots and you're going to survive. And they are quite, they're scrappy players, and Sloan's quite athletic, and Durham's quite athletic, and Malcolm gets his hands on balls, and they compete, and so you can win with funny lineups if they're all competitors and they're all plugged in. But as for taking the game forward, for taking it forward for future, there's like nothing in it really for me.
So McKenzie, 20 seconds to go, 2 free throws, 82-79. Jimenez then a drive to the basket, 82-81 with 11 seconds to go. Timeout advance. Walsh is fouled. He makes both free throws, 84-81. And then Durham with an air ball. Leicester then timeout in advance, and they almost got a 5-second violation. Ended up throwing it towards Loving, stolen by Malcolm, and Bunyan with a rearranged three thanks to pressure from McKenzie on the buzzer misses.
Yeah, to be honest, it's unlike Leicester not to get the ball in bounds. They're hardly Bristol 22, they normally do get the ball in bounds.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having gigs at everybody a day. I've had enough. So that was unlike that. But as I say, it was all the whole game it felt just a little bit off for me. It was a bit weird. I think whilst it was the teams are playing hard. I mean, Walsh gets to shoot 2 foul shots at the end. That's good for his development. He's in the game at the end. So, Rob will be looking at him thinking, is he a guy I can go forward with? Is he going to be in my top 8 going forward? Because that's basically what every coach in the league is looking for, is like, which guys are going to be in my top 8, and primarily which, 3 or 4 British guys am I going to get in my top 8? Because you're going to be signing, 4 or 5 Americans.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one for him going forward. Because if Leicester don't want him in the top 8, someone else might look at it and think, well, we're not maybe at, we haven't got the same aspirations as Leicester, but we'll take him, so someone, at a reasonable price. So that matters for him. But apart from that, was what it was.
McKenzie, 25 points, 12 of 12 from the free throw line. Walsh, 15. Loving, 13 points, 13 rebounds, although 3 of 12 shooting. Leicester were 35% from field goal range, but 25 of 27 from the free throw line.
Yeah, I'll get you home.
Durham, 22 points, 11 of 11 free throws. And that is the first time since I can check, i.e. 2008, that one game has had 2 players shoot 100% and make more than 10 free throws each. Random stat of the day.
It was. When you've extended this unnecessarily long podcast
by
15 seconds.
Sloan 22 off 23 shots, 7 assists. Malcolm 14.6 rebounds. They shot 40% and 90% from the free throw line, but 5 of 22 from 3. So Saturday,
sorry, and Jeremiah Bailey. I mean, how weird, son. Sorry, you're a pro. No way. There's no way that cannot happen. Don't care what type of game it is. No way. That foul, I mean, I didn't look carefully enough at the other fouls, but that foul was just nuts.
Yeah, and he'd actually tried to get it 15 feet further down the court.
That was almost like, I've just tweaked my hamstring. I don't need to be in the game anymore. It was just absolutely crackers. How can a coach line him after that?
So Saturday, same scoreline for the Caledonia Gladiators, but a different result. Surrey Scorchers at 81, Caledonia Gladiators 84. Lawrence, as you trailed earlier, was back. Onwas did play despite that ankle injury. Tape didn't. I missed the first half of this because I was in Cardiff doing wheelchair basketball, but it was a 14-7 Gladiators lead, and then Martin with some 3s, 7 in a row. Surrey ahead, and Surrey with a bit of momentum at that point.
Yeah. Surrey Lawrence was back. I mean, as I say, that blew my mind. It's like, you've got 8 games left. You've got to win them all to get in the playoffs, and you don't play the night before. I'm not quite sure what's being gained from him playing, to be honest, at this point. Because you may as well play Bazumbru and see what you've got for next year. I appreciate the pressure is on to win. Of course it is. But, I don't, he's been out, 6 weeks, 7 weeks again. And he comes off the bench, and he helps. He does help because he's a talented player. But his status has been such that they just haven't been able to rely on him for any point of time. And as I say, the whole thing about we'll play you on Saturday but not on Friday. Every game matters. I just didn't get it at all. In relation to the rest of them, We know they're competitive. McFoley is a one of those good shot, bad shot guys, isn't he? Just every time he shoots it, you think, oh no, and then enough of them go in for you, think, oh yes. And it's kind of changed the way they play, and kind of Lloyd's had to sell a little bit of his soul to the devil to get McFoley. But I mean, he needed another guard shortly before the deadline. Again, it's the deadline, so you're limited for what you've got, and he's kind of having to live with some of his shot selection, which at times is good and at times isn't. Which is very different to the way they've been playing earlier on in the season, where they've been a lot more deliberate. But any which way you can to get wins, I suppose. The problem is it's just not quite getting them wins. Caledonia, Ali Hodzic, I thought was very good in this game, although he didn't finish the game because Gareth went small to compete. But I thought he was really very good around the rim and and just taking up space and finishing. And what we've seen of him, he's going to be a real handful, particularly against teams where he has a degree of size advantage. He's very good at using that and manipulating that into scoring. He's not quite as dexterous when he comes up against guys who are as big or bigger than him, because he has all these like little push shots and spins and stuff like that. So he's dependent on his size to get the ball away. But he's really impressed since he came into the league, I think. Far more than he did when he was at London. But I'm not sure if he was being played in the right way or whatever. So he helped them, and Sloan, obviously, Sloan is a mercurial player. He can make shots and make plays, and
he takes a lot though.
He does take a lot.
44 shots in 2 games or something. Admittedly, the Leicester ones.
Yeah, albeit there wasn't any big guys to shoot it against Leicester, so you probably thought, here I go. But he's mercurial.
But he had 20 plus in this game as well.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's an awful distribution.
No.
Just particularly when they're starting Jimenez, and Jimenez doesn't really look to shoot it. You see, so that kind of sends a new responsibility to Sloan. So yeah, it would. I mean, as I say, I was speaking earlier on, new ref in this game. I'm surprised you get a new ref in March, but actually I thought he was really good. It particularly called a goaltend at the beginning of the second quarter when one of the the Caledonia players just touched the rim on a shot, which could easily have been missed. And he got it right, and he just immediately called it. Right signals, off you go. There were a couple of bizarre calls. Caledonia missed the end of the first half. Caledonia got hosed on an out of bounds call on the baseline, and McFoley had a 3-point play at the other end. If anybody watches that back, it's as clear as day. The Caledonia ball, and they gave it to Surrey. But ultimately the game was just back and forwards, wasn't it? Until the fourth.
So they did get 13 out when they hit some threes, but Durham quickly pulled it back to 6, and 12 to go. It's 61-56, and then Durham has Caledonia in the lead. 2 minutes gone in the fourth quarter, 63-64. Let's get to the end. A Martin 3, 2:29 to go, ties it up at 78-78. Sloan with the fade away, 78-80, and then Martin again with the 3-pointer, 81-80. They're back in front.
Yeah, and comes down to execution at the end of the game. And
there was a few interesting bits. So Durham to the rim, 81-82. McFoley top of the key, misses. Bailey, I'm not sure why he's passing at the end of the shot clock. He had to shoot that. They got a 24-second violation. 44.9 seconds to go, a timeout. They got a bit of a scrambled play. They did score at the end of it, but it wasn't out of Johnson's hands in time, so it was a shot clock violation.
It was a shot clock violation.
It was a shot clock.
Somebody went online and said it wasn't. It clearly was a shot clock.
It definitely was. Yeah, I did the same thing. 20 seconds left. Sloan was then fouled, makes 2 free throws, 81-84. Then they come down. Martin with a big screen that left Durham on the floor. And it was one of them in real time. I thought, oh, is that an illegal screen? And then I watched it back this morning just to check, and I thought it was a good screen, actually.
Wasn't as good. It was only second in the Screen of the Week award. So,
what was the Screen of the Week?
Screen of the Week was David Ulf today against.
Oh, yeah.
That was the screen. That was the screen of the season.
Yeah.
Wow. That brought me back pleasant memories of watching Defoe crack people at the halfway line. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
So that left them sort of scrambling because he's on the floor. And actually, Sloan manages a quick foul before the ball goes to McFoley for what could have been a potential game-tying shot, and it was only the second team foul. So 9.3 seconds left, sideline ball, and then I
Just
thought,
on that, I've absolutely canned players all season for incredibly dumb plays at the end of the game. That was a really smart play. Watched it at the time, and it was an attempt on the ball. You're not going to call, it was late, but it was an attempt. But he knew what he was doing. It was one of those ones whereby I don't mind if I foul him.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly smart play because he realized what was going on and they had fouls to give.
Yeah. And then Wang, I thought a really poor choice of shot in the corner. He had almost right there, hands up in the air. It was just a really difficult shot and airball.
Yeah. They don't really have a shot creator for somebody else. They don't really have anybody who's going to get in the lane. McFoley creates for himself primarily. And so it became a Hail Mary shot.
The air ball fell into Teo's hands. His layup went around and out, but it went out of bounds off Malcolm with 1.2 seconds to go. So it's a baseline ball, and then Foley fall away. Decent look really for him from there.
Yeah, he wasn't bad actually from the corner.
Comes off
from the corner it was, but smart by Sloan not to foul him.
Yeah,
I thought they were a bit careful, a bit risky with the tail play. Actually, I thought they were had to go out of the way very quickly and given them the two. They challenged it, which is a risk and 3-point play. But no, I mean, ultimately, it's a Caledonia haven't won many games on the road. Surrey are playing teams a little bit like Newcastle. They're playing teams tight at home, but they're not getting over the line. And you're at that point of the season whereby every mistake is magnified.
McFoley 23 and 8, Martin 19, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, Wang 11, Sloan 24 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, Durham 20 points and 5 rebounds, Ali Hodgic 7 of 8 shooting, 16 points and 11 rebounds. We finally made it to today. Only 3 games to go. I'm sure we'll breeze through this one. Plymouth City Patriots 67, Cheshire Phoenix 90. Neighbour was back for Cheshire. PJ going with the experienced BBL 5. None of the new guys in the starting lineup. But when Ikekapola came in, he hit a couple of threes, and Plymouth were up 13-7. I think that's
Who was the guy who hit a couple of threes again?
I can't remember now.
What was his name? Ikekapola, yeah, very good. Ikekapola. Yeah. Credit,
Forgive me if I've got it wrong.
What was the guy that signed a few years ago who got injured straight away?
He never played. I didn't have to learn it.
Craig,
that was his name. Yeah. Craig O.
Craig O. My only thought about this game was to wonder if what's kind of going on in Plymouth, because obviously they got beat by a lot. And then I see that Gadsden, who's been the kind of shining light scorer, he played 13 minutes in this game.
Although part of that was David Ulf's fault.
Part of it, yeah, but he didn't play much in the first half. Maybe he would play a bit longer if it hoped that, but I was surprised he didn't start because he's been the guy. But you're right, he went with the 5 that he had. But the more interesting thing was that when Brandon got 2 fouls early on, he came with Lanny Pukin instead of Gadsden. Yeah, that surprised me. That tells me that there's something that's either been said or been done or not right with Gadsden, because Gadsden would normally be in one of your main guys. And for Lanny Pukin to come off the bench first, that's PJ making a statement about something that's going on. He says, speculating,
but they've got beat by 40.
Yeah, I mean he's entitled to. Yeah, I'm just it's just my reading of it. And Cheshire really played like a team that had travelled down to Plymouth on a Sunday for a 3:00 tip for the first quarter. They couldn't make a shot. They played with energy, but basically everybody took a turn to shoot and everybody missed. Plymouth just struggled to create enough offense, and ultimately we're at the time of the season where you have to have guys who can put the ball in the basket. And they didn't.
And Will Neighbour did, with 3s either side of halftime. They scored 12 in a row to 39, 51. And even though Brandon and Dangakoda did hit 3s to cut it to 4, Evans scored 9 straight. They got
the Neighbour did. Jack had 3 threes in the first half, and Neighbour got going, and Evans got comfortable, and obviously Austin is constantly crashing the glass and getting to the rim and doing all that stuff. And we're at the point whereby, unless you're playing the Lion C team, 67 points ain't going to win you a game. Not at the moment.
No. Dangakoda 11, Dusha 10 points, 5 assists, Hawthorne 10, Neighbour 5 of 9 from 3 for 17 points, Austin 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and Evans 15 points and 8 rebounds. London Lions 80, Sheffield Sharks 82. Sheffield become the first non-European team to beat London twice this season. London with a 9-0 run to 12-7. Pipkins then 8 and a 15-1 run, and they've got ahead early. Sheffield 13-22.
Yeah, in this game, Oni was back, but Best was out. And again, Comagum started and Sharma was on the bench. And again, it's a London team that's played a lot of games, and so there's no consistency in what they're doing in relation to their lineups. And the other teams have got players who are looking at London thinking, yeah, these guys are my ticket to it, to a good job. And Ramsey came out in this game, and I talked about him before, but Ramsey came out in this game and really asserted himself. The thing is, Sheffield, we've talked about Sheffield quite a lot. They are rarely going to beat themselves. Even when they were the differently constructed Sheffield early season, they didn't beat themselves. They just didn't have enough at times to get it done. And I think London rather fell foul of that in this game. And there's only so much rotating that you can do, and particularly with the again best pulled a Jamel Anderson or a Thomas Bell. Bez was possibly their best player at Newcastle on Friday night in the minutes that he did play before he got into foul trouble. And without him, the quickness, they don't have quite the same quickness in the backcourt, and I thought that hurt them a little bit. And Sheffield did what they meant to do. They moved the ball, they spaced it out, they got the spacing about right. Coke basically did finish inside, and they competed defensively. And London really weren't at it, certainly in the first half.
So they were still 10 up with 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. Decker with 5 points cut it to 42-45 at half time. And then in the second half, owner Decker Zubchurch hitting threes. London started to edge away, and you thought, Sheffield have given it a good go, but they're not going to hang on. But they didn't get fully away, London. And with 5 minutes to go, it was an 8-point game, 77-69. But then 3 minutes ago, Nichols with the 3 makes it a 3-point game. Rotino with the 3 ties the game at 71-71, 2:41 to go. Nelson with a drive and a miss, and 1:56 on the clock. Glasgow with the third 3 in quick succession for them, and it's 77-80.
Yeah, and we talked about all season London turning the tap up and down and the heat up and down. This was the first game they got burned by it because Decker wasn't in the game. I think until probably the 3-minute mark in the fourth quarter. He checked the live stats, but he only came in after Sheffield had made 1 or 2 of those threes and kind of broke it back down from a 9-point game to like a 3-point game or something like that. And by that time, Sheffield's momentum and confidence level was such that it came down to who was going to make shots. And I'm afraid London's execution at the end of the game left something to be desired. You'll take us through it, but with about 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, Zubcic shot an awful shot from the corner.
Let's get there then. So they almost had a turnover. Then Nelson hits a 3, 80-80. Glasgow in the key, 1:14 to go, 80-82. Zubcic with the corner 3 miss that you talked.
A horrible shot in that circumstance.
Rotino was then blocked by Sharma. It goes out of bounds for a London ball, 35.4 seconds to go. Timeout advanced the ball, but I thought the pass was bad because Decker was right on the sideline. There were 2 defenders about him, and I didn't think you should throw the pass there. But obviously it then deflects out of bounds off Decker for a Sheffield ball.
It's Decker, you throw him the ball, he's your guy.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and then he pulls a little tantrum.
Yeah.
And this is what I say about these guys have edge. They might be the nicest guys and they're doing a wonderful job for the league, but they want to win and they have edge. And he put a little tantrum, a couple of slaps on the floor. Ref puts a whistle to his mouth and then ignores it. Another bottle job, I thought personally, but there you go. It's easy calling those type of technicals in the first quarter to assert your authority.
Yeah.
Right? if you're going to mean it, you got to do it when it matters. If you're going to talk about, deliberate disrespect or showing up an official, you're not, on every criteria, actions, proximity to the ref, repeated nature of the actions. You did it more than once, and every criteria you call that I've seen, and and I was saying not to call it. That was Jordan rules, Decker rules, Sam Decker rules. Wasn't right, but move on.
Glasgow missed with 9 seconds to go, and then it wasn't the best shot they got at the end there for Decker.
No, Decker again, dribble. They became a bit discombobulated near the end, and I think that basically the coach just unfortunately just slightly overplayed his hand in relation to the guys he had on court with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter in an 8-point game against a team that was playing with confidence. I think he probably needed to go to his closing 5 a little bit quicker, and because he didn't, it slowed them down. That said, it doesn't matter. It's more important to him. It's more important to him that his guys are healthy. Now, what I will say is that's 3 very close games they played in a period of 5 days, and that can be mentally taxing.
Yeah.
Who are they playing? Are they playing on Tuesday?
They are playing on Wednesday, I think, this week. I don't think I've got it open, but I think it's Wednesday this week. It's Turk Telecom they're playing. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. Yeah, it is Wednesday because they're playing Wednesday, Thursday, aren't they? Because they're playing
Newcastle on Thursday, aren't they, as well?
Yeah.
So, another 2 games in 2 days, so that's going to become wearing at some point. The question, I suppose, is going to be what they have in the tank for the playoffs, because that's all we're competing for at the moment in this country. You would think that their level will raise for the playoffs.
Yeah.
But there is a danger that all the games that they play might just knock the edge off a little bit. We saw that today, and of course the other teams are getting better.
They should still win the league with at least 5 games to spare. I would have thought 4 or 5 games.
Rich man's problems,
Yeah. Decker 14 points, 8 of 18 shooting, only 14 points and 8 rebounds. Subchich 14, Ramsey 22, Nichols 15 and 6, Pipkins 12. Sheffield, by the way, 3 offensive rebounds for 5 second chance points and won the game. Shout out to Rowe.
Yeah, well, you've got to keep. Firstly, Sheffield have got spacing now. They've got 4. They're playing 4 out, 1 in. They're not having 2 bigs on the court. Cook's not a great offensive rebounder because he's quite statuesque, and in Delpesh a little bit, but they're all too big for him in the London team. But secondly, you got to get back against London. You can't let them go and transition on you. So the commentators were talking about it, saying, "Well, why are they not offensive rebounders? Because they're getting back." They were playing him in the half court. That's their game. It was a good strategy. It was good game planning, if that's what it was. But I thought it was entirely sensible.
So let's get to the final game. We probably should have left a bit more time for this. Manchester Giants 99.
No, we
don't have an end time anyway, do we? We've probably already done 2 hours. Manchester 99, Newcastle 96. Good stop for the Eagles, out to 5-2. Kind of stayed in front. 8-0 run, got them 14 clear in the second quarter, 34-48.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this game at Manchester play out a few times with different teams. Teams go up on them early. Manchester's defense isn't overly respectful of the opposition because they know that they can score. And Newcastle made a ton of shots. Cohen made shots. Kyle Johnson had 16 points in the first half. They were able to get just enough stops, but the biggest play in this game was Friday night at the Virtue Motors Arena when Hassan French fell over Darius Defoe and twisted his ankle. Because playing without French, ultimately their defense, he's been the rock of their defense, and in the second half in this game they gave up 55 or something like that and couldn't get the stops that they needed to get to win the game. So losing French meant that was another body down on the rotation. The only 2 guys coming off the bench were Kennedy and Ubiara. Ubiara was very good. Chris, I've been a bit harsh on him, but he was really, really good in this game. He was disruptive. He was active. He was making the right decisions. And basically, Newcastle had 7 guys who, they're not bad. The bottom line, they can score, they can finish, but what they can't do is finish games.
So let's spin it through to the end. Only really Cohen threes for Newcastle, as Manchester had a 21-7 run to lead 71-69, which was their first lead of the game. Into the fourth quarter, Gordon got a technical for visual dissent. Next play down the bench got one as well. And
yeah, I mean, I've had enough talking about what visual dissent wasn't visual dissent. I'm just going to say, does Decker get that technical?
So
and that was the same ref they had on Friday as well. So, you're putting the ref in a very difficult position.
So from 73-71, Eagles had a 20-5 run in the next 5 minutes with Cohen's threes. Gordon hit one. Dirk Williams got an unsportsmanlike foul for bloodying Denzel Ubiara's nose. And it's 78-91 with about 5 minutes to go. They're still 87-96 up with 3 minutes to play, and then it all stops for Newcastle.
Yeah, well, two things. Manchester, all season, they've picked up their defense in the last few minutes. It's almost like they play, they wait, and Green in particular picks up his defense in the fourth quarter. You've seen that multiple times. I thought they did that. Newcastle lost a little bit of cohesion, but I mean, Gordon missed a couple of foul shots, which didn't help. Kyle Johnson, I thought was running on fumes. I thought, he played a lot on Friday night, and he's 33. He's playing back to back. So he played great in the first half. He had 20 in the game, but he was struggling. He got an interception, I think, which he then dropped and committed unsportsmanlike just before that. He just looked really tired in relation to that. Defoe wasn't in the game because of matchups, I'm assuming, because they wanted to have Kennedy guard Fletcher, because, to be honest, neither Cohen nor Hamlet was showing the capability of defending Fletcher, so he used Kennedy's length on him. But that meant that Defoe, couldn't really be in the game because of the spacing and that. And whilst he had 4 fouls, had one Darius in the game at that point, I think, just for a stop or two. Just if he gets his 5th foul, so what? And they've not really executed offensively in the end of games for probably the whole season, if I'm absolutely honest. They lost a lot of close games where it's come down to a lot of kind of dribbling, and that's kind of what happened in this game. Manchester, I mean, losing a 9-point lead against a 13-point lead against Manchester in 5 minutes is not unknown, and it's actually not the word. It's not indefensible. If this might sound crazy, and certainly 9-point lead in 3 minutes is not indefensible, because ultimately the way that they play is such that they are so
what they do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what they do.
So Robertson jumper 89-96 with 2:57 to go. Gordon misses 2 free throws. Robertson makes it 91-96. Dirk with a steal and dunk 93-96. I was waiting for a timeout at this point.
I thought they might got a timeout at that point. I watched it back. I thought Cohen got tripped a little bit by Dirk, but I understand there wasn't much contact on it, and Cohen's got to do better to get the ball over when the pressure is up. And this is why they've struggled in close games. But Dirk got the dunk. I'm not sure how many timeouts they had left. I'm not sure they only had one left.
They definitely had one. I don't know if they had any more than that.
Yeah,
but at that point, the lead is just
one. It's a tough one. Unfortunately, at that point you're relying on you've got a veteran team apart from Hamlet. But they're a team that's kind of shrunk in the moment. And as I say, without Defoe stabilizing force on the court, I think Hamlet basically turned the ball over, didn't he?
Well, Green blocked a shot and then did a really good job.
It's a bad shot because he was going full speed. It wasn't a smart move.
But it was a great play from Green to then jump up and throw it off him to go out of bounds for a Manchester ball. Dirk Williams strings a 3 at the top of the key.
That's a Dirk shot. I mean, I'm not sure you can defend that much better because he was 4 feet outside the 3-point line. Maybe you can try and get in front of him, stop him catching the ball. But you've got to, as a player, you've got to know that's coming. And we watched the video, so we probably knew it was coming, but they didn't necessarily. It's a hell of a play. I mean, there's nobody else on the court could make that shot. Ultimately, it's a Stars League, and when games come down the line, have you got a guy who can make a shot like that? Not many have. Decker can. Dirk Williams, Newcastle ran to both of them this weekend.
Yeah, Kennedy missed. Eagles offensive rebound. Hamlet missed. Giants ball. 22.7 seconds to go. Robertson in the corner just towed the line, so it was only worth 2. 92-96. Timeout, no advance. Kennedy underneath. Robertson goes straight up in the air. He misses, and then they were slow to foul on the rebound there as well.
Yeah, well, Kennedy has to make that layup.
He does, yeah.
He has to make that layup. He's at the rim. He has to finish with authority. He has to go up there. He has to get fouled. he kind of just flicked it up there. You know, it was a nice play, it was a nice cut. But you know, he has to finish, and unfortunately, they've been, as I say, you know, the Newcastle are talented, but a little bit flawed in the kind of the cold, hard, dark edges of the game, and you know, and making plays when it really matters, and getting the ball where it needs to go, where it matters, and making foul shots to finish the game. You know, we had Kyle Johnson against Bristol, we had Justin Gordon in this game. Foul shots at the end of the game, or getting stops at the end of the game, making smart plays at the end of the game. That's why I was surprised Darius wasn't in the game, because you know, I think he's the only one, particularly out French, he's the only one who really you would say, well, if he's going to go down, he's not going to go down. He's not going to just let it happen like it did, if you know what I mean. Against that, you know, from a scouting report perspective, you know, if you're going to get beaten by Manchester, you know, Robertson making 2 jump shots in the last 3 minutes from 25 feet, you kind of live with that, because you can't defend all of them, and you've stopped Fletcher getting the ball, apart from Williams making one ridiculous shot. He managed to turn the ball over not getting it over half court, which gave him 2 points. Robertson got a cheap offensive rebound, which is going to happen because you're playing small to try and match up with them. And Robertson's made 2 jump shots, you know. So it's not, if I can put it this way, the most brainless way to lose. It's just that when you play on the road at Manchester, you have to keep scoring. And they couldn't keep scoring, and ultimately it would kind of give the ball to Hamlet and stand around, and that's, you know, what's happened in games at the end. Hamlet is at times too young to make the right decision when it matters in his basketball career. You just don't see that kind of I got this mentality in him. You know, you know it when you see it. You know, you see Said Nelson with the basketball, think this is me, or it's him, or I go back and I remember Trey Moore and Jay Page and all those guys. So they've got that degree of little bit of confidence about him that this is what they're going to do. It's almost like Javion Hamlet's got so many moves, he's not sure which one he's going to pull out, you know. And outside of that, you know, there was no one who's kind of stood up to say, it's me, I'll make a play. So I would quite like him to get the ball to Darius and throw it down the post and go that way, because I think that would have been the best option when the game was running down. But you know, credit to Manchester, you know, they keep making plays. Credit to Robertson. Robertson ultimately made jump shots, and you'd live with that. But he just another lost opportunity for Newcastle. They're playing entertaining games. You know, they may. I'm sure London would much prefer to play Plymouth in the playoffs. But you know, they don't count for anything unless you can find a way of getting over the line. And to be honest, Mark's getting a hell of a lesson in the BBL in relation to, you know, having his team ready to play, being in close games, but you have to have a closer.
Lewis made 1 or 2 free throws with 2 seconds to go. Hamlet had a heave from inside his own half on the buzzer. Fletcher, 23 points, 13 assists. Green, 17 points and 12 rebounds. Robertson, 18 points and 10 rebounds, 17 of them in the second half. Johnson, 20 and 8. Cohen, 20 and 7 assists, 6 of 10 for 3. Hamlet, 18, 5 and 4. I'll just quickly run through the league table. Lions now dropped to 25 and 3. Bristol 21 and 9. Leicester have qualified for the playoffs now, 18 and 8. Manchester might have qualified. I'll need to check that one. 16 and 13. Caledonia 15 and 14. Cheshire 13 and 15. Sheffield 13 and 16 now. And then a bit of a gap to Plymouth, who are 10 and 17. Newcastle still 3 games behind, 7 and 20. And I'll need to check Surrey's head-to-head with Plymouth as well, because they may be officially eliminated. 3 and 26.
Yeah, there's not much jeopardy. Is there really? Basically, can Newcastle catch Plymouth is basically the only thing of any real interest. To be honest, Bristol and Leicester finishing second or third, well, doesn't really matter, because they end up playing each other in the semi-finals if they both win. And everybody else, you know, Sheffield wouldn't mind playing Leicester or Bristol. Caledonia wouldn't mind playing Leicester or Bristol. You know, everybody else can compete with everybody else, and so and there's no home advantage in finishing higher. So the whole thing kind of peters out a bit, really. Sorry, guys, for the BBL, for the BBL. Come and watch our exciting league game, all that stuff. But in reality, it's just, you know, how many new ways can Newcastle find to lose games to keep Plymouth ahead of them?
Yeah. They meet on the last day of the season. Could it
Well,
be
I mean,
again?
I think there's an extreme. I mean, all Newcastle have to be is within one game either way of Plymouth for that to matter. So if either Newcastle are one behind, one in front, or tied, that game is live, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think there's a pretty strong chance it will
And
be.
the head-to-head is up, so it could be
Yeah, that's what I
one
mean, because the head-to-head is up. Yeah,
where
the nine
somebody
point.
needs to win by 10 or something. I
Newcastle
think.
need to win by 10 to win the head-to-head.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so that's a real that's kind of a cliffhanger as much as it is for what it will accomplish and what it
Shame
will
it's not
give
a
you.
Friday night.
Yeah, what will it give you? A game against London. But having said that, I thoroughly entertained the game. I was thoroughly entertained by the game against London this weekend, and I do, I'm not sure if London are going full out and they've got a bit of prep time. I don't think that anybody can come close. But lots of things can happen in the last 6 weeks of a season. A couple of twisted ankles at the wrong time. Player falls out and decides he wants to go home. All sorts of things have happened. Funny things have happened. Andre Smith
Indeed.
went home before played all season and went home before the playoff final.
Yeah.
Because we won.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Yeah. On that reminiscent of what was that, about 12 years ago?
2008-09.
No, more than that, then 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
We will call it a night. So thank you very much for listening and making it all the way to the end. And
did.
Dave and I, Dave and I will be back next Sunday night, hopefully to do it a little shorter, but do it all over again. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday. Goodbye.